That morning, the glass in my office held the city like a ledger. Every street a line item, every rooftop a note in the margin. And I knew that to stay ahead, I would have to weigh each breath against the balance sheet of my life. Because I was Helena Montez, 35, a senior bank executive who wore power the way others wear tailored coats, with quiet ease and a hidden hunger. The kind that does not show until it bars the door to a dream you are not yet ready to name aloud. I kept a secret ambition tucked away in that quiet place, the one that does not shout, but slides through every pulse of the day. A plan to turn every betrayal into a predictable gain, to convert every crack in the glass into a cleaner view of the skyline. And the personal event that frames this episode sits like a weight on my chest and sits there still, a memory polished by time and kept edge-sharp by pain. Years ago, I had a partner who smiled first with his hands and then with his words. A man who learned my routines as if they were a map to my heart, who knew which doors to knock on and which to leave closed, who listened to the gossip in the hallways and then fed it back to me with a grain of truth that felt almost kind. My best friend, a woman I trusted with the same intimacy I shared with my deepest secrets, became his accomplice in a game I never consented to play. And one night, the door to my life shut with a finality that echoed in my ears for days afterward. The scent of his cologne, still clinging to my coat, as if it could prove I had not imagined the betrayal. The warmth of her smile on the other end of the phone. A cruel reminder that there are lines some people will cross for their own comfort. A line I had never believed could exist between two people who swore they stood for the same future. They told me nothing would break me. And at first, I did not believe the truth would arrive in such a simple, cold shape. But it did, and the image of their laughter stayed with me as I climbed higher and learned to read the room the way a heart reads a pulse, with careful attention to the quiet tremor before a decision changes everything. And so I carried that wound with me, tucked away behind the calm face I wore whenever I walked into a boardroom. The way a storm hides behind a white shirt and a smile, until the day came when the city gave me the stage I had earned and the chance to repay the debt I never asked for. We begin with a choice, a matter that could have stayed private but could not, because the hurt had a living body in it, a person who would not disappear just because time passed. A man who chose to walk back into my orbit with a new name for a familiar truth. A man who, after all those seasons of quiet evenings and shared plans, had the nerve to walk through the doors of my empire wearing repentance like a badge and a cunning plan in his pocket. And I cannot pretend the anger did not rush through me with the force of a storm tide when I learned he had a new title in a division meant to test the limits of every veteran's patience. The irony was not lost on me, the way fate flipped a page and handed him back to me in a form I could use, not to suffer, but to exact something close to justice. The kind of justice that feels like a victory rather than a vengeance. The kind that leaves you with a clear conscience and a sunken heart all at once. He had betrayed the woman who had shared her future with him, a woman who had stood by him when the hours grew long and the numbers grew cruel. And now, in the most chilling of ironies, he was to become my subordinate, a character in a story I would write with the ink of careful calculations and the tremor of a quiet rage. I had learned to move through the world with a soft step and a loud mind, a combination that made people underestimate the depths of my patience, which is the most dangerous weapon I own. The boardroom drills us to believe that success is a solitary climb, but I knew better. It is a dance with the people who think you owe them something, a choreography of strategy and restraint, that ends in one clear moment when the truth lands like a hammer and you must decide whether to bend or break. When I learned that the man who betrayed me would be taking on the very project I had spent years designing, I felt that familiar pull, the hunger to transform a personal wound into a professional instrument. It did not take long for the plan to take shape. The bank was moving toward a lean, fast, analytic wing, the kind that could sift through risk like a blade through silk. And I decided to invite him into that world, not as a hero, but as a test, a controlled variable whose presence would reveal the flaws in him that his charm had once masked. I spoke with the head of human resources and with the lead of the new division, and I chose the worst possible moment to surprise him with an offer that would look like a favor and feel to him like a trap. A job title that carried with it the weight of a past he could not outrun. The proposal came with a dossier of his missteps in the years before, with traces of gossip and the sting of rumor. But I left out nothing that would keep him from understanding the consequences of his choices, and I watched his eyes narrow and then widen as he tried to hide the tremor of fear behind a rehearsed smile. For I know the moment a man knows he has met the one who can own him with a single decision. The plan was simple and cruel in its clarity. He would join the team as a senior analyst in a new risk monitoring unit, a position that would force him to answer to people who remembered the rumors and could not forget the past. And I would be his direct supervisor, a role I would hold with the calm devotion of someone who no longer needed permission to claim what was hers by design and effort. The first week was a study in restraint for him, a constant reminder that a single misstep could ruin everything, that the trust between us was a bridge that he could cross only with my permission. And I watched him know that the line he crossed long ago had not disappeared simply because he sought a quieter life. It was in the quiet moments that the truth showed itself, not in grand gestures, but in the way he paused before a question. The way his eyes flickered when I mentioned the future, the way his voice changed when he spoke of the friend who had walked away with her own broken heart after the betrayal. A detail I kept in a separate file, a ledger of the personal consequences of a choice he had made to pursue a life outside the bonds of trust. There are moments when a woman learns the true arithmetic of power, when she realizes that the most efficient way to rectify a wrong is not to shout it to the crowd, but to write it into the margins of the ledger, so that the truth cannot be erased by time or charm, or the laughter of those who forget what trust costs. As weeks turned into months, the work grew heavier, and the air in the office turned crisper, a little colder, a little more precise. And I found the distance between us becoming the most reliable protection I owned. He began to see what I had always known, that his past would never leave him alone, that the woman who had been left behind by a careless heart would always carry a tool sharp enough to cut through the lies he told himself to sleep at night. And then came the moment I had prepared for, the moment in which his resume would reveal what I had already learned by experience, the moment the board would learn the truth through the quiet testimony of data and the blunt honesty of numbers. I called a meeting with the entire leadership team, an audience who believed me to be a careful guardian of our investors and a meticulous steward of our clients. And I pressed play on a presentation that laid bare the cost of trust broken, the way a single act can ripple outward to threaten the health of a whole institution. And I did so not with the glee of vengeance, but with the cool, precise certainty that a just result is a result that can be proven, measured, and repeated. He did not plead his case with a smile that hid his fear. He did not offer excuses that sounded like reason.